I did not say anything when they muttered that I was being a problem. I did not pull away when the guard caught my arm. I just tugged my jacket sleeve back a bit, enough to show what was underneath. An old patch, faded, frayed around the edges, but still there. 82nd Airborne Division. That was the moment the entire room went quiet. A voice cut through the air, sharp and heavy with memory. "Where did you get that?" It was not a question meant to be answered lightly. The man asking already knew. He was not accusing. He was remembering. If you believe stories like his should not disappear, take a second to subscribe and leave a comment saying, "Honor," below. The museum doors sighed shut behind me as I stepped inside, brushing the winter chill off my shoulders. My name is Walter Hayes. I stood there for a moment in the lobby, letting my hands warm up. I was wearing a clean flannel shirt, good denim jeans, and my old brown field jacket. That jacket had been with me through places most folks only see in books. The fabric was worn thin on one shoulder, and stitched there was a 82nd Airborne Division patch. So old the thread was almost gone. I did not rush. I never do anymore. I was not holding a phone, not checking the time. I gave a small nod to the front desk clerk, a kid young enough to be my grandson, and started down the hallway toward the exhibits. My cane tapped softly on the floor with every step, steady and slow. "Excuse me, sir," the clerk called out. I turned around, calm as ever. "We need timed entry tickets now," he said. "Do you have one?" "No," I answered. "I come every Veterans Day week. Been doing that since this place opened. I just wanted to sit for a bit. Quietly." He paused, unsure what to do, then poked at the screen in front of him. Another employee leaned in close and whispered something I could not hear, but I could read it on her face. Here he is again, just hanging around. I kept walking. At the far end of the Hall of Remembrance sat a long wooden bench facing the memorial wall. Black glass stretched from one end to the other, covered in names. Thousands of them. I eased myself down, slow and careful, resting both hands on top of my cane. I did not talk. I did not pull out a camera. I just looked at the names, one after another, letting them sink in. I could feel eyes on me. Back at the desk, the clerk picked up his radio and leaned in. Not long after that, a young security guard came out from a side corridor. He walked stiff, shoulders back, jaw tight, like he had something to prove to someone. He headed straight for me. "Sir," he said, stopping in front of me, "I need you to leave the museum." I looked up at him. "Why?" He glanced back toward the desk, then at me again. "We received complaints. You are loitering." I pushed myself to my feet. My knees popped loud enough to echo. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I simply nodded and pulled my jacket sleeve back, just a little, showing the worn eagle patch underneath. The guard reached out to guide me, his hand gripping my elbow harder than it needed to, and then the air shattered. "Hold it." The word cracked through the room like breaking glass. The guard froze mid-step. I turned slowly. Standing near the entrance was a man in full-dress uniform. His chest was covered in ribbons. His posture was straight as steel. Silver eagles gleamed on his collar. A general. He did not say anything else. He did not have to. The man in uniform just kept staring at the patch on my sleeve, like he had seen something that was not supposed to exist anymore. A ghost from another life. Most days I move through this world without anyone really noticing. I've gotten used to that. At 78 years old, I am not broken down, but I am not in a hurry either. My life runs quiet and predictable now. I wake up before the sun every morning. I put water on the stove and brew strong black coffee in the same dented kettle I have been using for 35 years. After that, I take a slow walk down Maple Avenue toward the Riverside Memorial Park, one careful step at a time. I usually sit on the benches under the elm trees, especially the one closest to the old war statue. There is no plaque there, just a soldier carved in stone, looking back over his shoulder. I understand that look. I never wear my medals. I do not bring up Vietnam unless someone asks, and these days, nobody really does. Down at the Liberty Grill, Linda always knows my order before I sit down. Rye toast, scrambled eggs, no salt. She never calls me sir. She just says, Mr. Hayes. I like that. It means she still notices I am there. When I head back to my apartment, the place is clean but plain. Bare walls, no television, just a few shelves of books, a radio by the window, and a box in the closet I have not opened in a long time. Inside that box are my silver star, a handful of old unit photographs, and a letter I never sent. It is addressed to a soldier who did not make it back. Once in a while, I take out one photograph in particular. 3 young men standing on a jungle trail, shirts open, arms thrown around each other, smiling like nothing in the world could touch them. One of them is me. Another is Samuel Nolan. We went through hell side by side. Somehow, I walked out, and he did not. For years after the war, I stayed in touch with Samuel's family. I sent cards, I called, I even visited once. But time keeps moving. People relocate. Phone numbers change. Eventually, the letters stop coming back, and the quiet settles in. Still, every year, I make the same trip to the museum memorial. Not for the speeches, not for the ceremonies. I go to sit. I go to remember. This year, the staff did not know who I was. Maybe they never had. I was not loud. I was not wearing a uniform. I just looked like another old man in a jacket that was a little too warm for the season. And in a building meant to honor memory, they tried to erase me. But someone else remembered. Someone who had been waiting a long time for this moment. Someone with stars on his shoulders. The young guard's hand fell away from my arm. I turned and saw the man standing near the entrance. He was tall, calm, with steel-gray hair and eyes locked onto my jacket like it was more than cloth and thread. The general stepped forward, paying no attention to the staff at all. "You are Walter Hayes, aren't you?" I studied his face. The voice stirred something deep in my chest, familiar in a way I could not quite place. Time had blurred it, but the memory was there, trying to break through. "I am," I said, keeping my guard up. "And who might you be?" The general's mouth lifted, not quite a smile, not quite a salute. "Richard Nolan," he said. "My father was Captain Samuel Nolan." Something stirred behind my eyes. A memory I had not touched in years. I saw it clear as day now. A family photograph. A small boy with bright eyes, held close by a man I once dragged out of a bunker that was caving in on itself. My voice dropped without me meaning it to. "You are his boy." He nodded once. "My father used to tell a story. He talked about a mechanic with a bad knee who carried him nearly half a mile while rounds were flying. Said he owed his life to a man who did not wait for orders, just did what needed doing." I let out a quiet chuckle. He always had a way of stretching the truth. "No," the general said, firm and certain. "He did not." The lobby had gone silent. You could feel it. Even the kid at the front desk had stopped moving, his face drained of color as he listened. The general turned toward the security guard who was standing off to the side, stiff and unsure of himself. "You laid hands on a man whose service patch is older than you are," the general said. "You should give real thought to how you treat those who came before you." The guard looked like he wanted the floor to open up and take him. He nodded quickly and murmured, "I'm sorry, sir." It was hard to tell which of us he meant. I lifted a hand. "It is all right. Let it go. The kid did not know." "That," the general replied, "is exactly the issue. Too many do not." He faced me again. "Would you walk with me? There is something I want you to see." I paused for a moment, then nodded. We set off together down the Hall of Remembrance, side by side. Nobody tried to stop us. Nobody even spoke. When we passed the bench where I had tried to sit earlier, the general slowed and motioned toward the wall of names. "You belong here more than any plaque we have ever put up," he said. I did not answer. but for the first time that day I felt my mouth curve upward, just a little. By that evening, the museum's front office had made more calls than they usually did in a month. The general spoke directly with the director. He was polite, but there was no room for excuses. No announcements, no headlines, he said. Not yet. Fix what you damaged first. I walked home the same way I always do. Slow. Cane tapping against the sidewalk. But something felt different. People looked at me. They noticed. Outside the diner, Linda waved before I even reached the door. "Your usual tomorrow, Mr. Hayes," she called. I nodded, already looking forward to it. Back in my apartment, I turned on the old lamp and sat by the window. I had not had company in weeks. Then there was a knock. Soft. Just 2 taps. When I opened the door, a young man stood there in a worn navy sweatshirt, holding up a newspaper clipping. "Are you the same Walter Hayes from this article?" he asked. I narrowed my eyes, studying him carefully. "What article?" I asked. The young man passed the paper to me. It was yellowed with age, folded soft at the edges. The photograph stopped me cold. There I was, back in 1971. Younger, stronger, covered in dirt and sweat. I was standing beside an armored transport, helmet crooked, eyes squinting into the sun. The headline read, "Local Mechanic Saves 5 in Tunnel Collapse. Silver Star Awarded." The kid swallowed. "I found this in my grandfather's things," he said. "He told me you rebuilt an engine while rounds were coming in. Said you got everyone out. That was your squad, right?" I traced a finger across the photo, slow and careful. "I guess it was," I said. He nodded once, like that was all he needed. "Thank you, sir." He did not wait for anything else. He turned and walked down the hallway, disappearing into the night. I closed the door softly behind him. The next morning, a small handwritten sign appeared outside the museum. It was taped near the entrance, simple and plain. "To Sergeant Hayes, we apologize. Your seat is reserved." On the bench where I had been turned away the day before, a folded card rested in the early sunlight. On the front, it said, "Welcome back." Inside, there were only 2 words, written by hand. "We remember." Just like that, I was no longer a name buried in an old record. I was a man the town had noticed again. And once people truly see you, they cannot pretend you are invisible anymore. There was no big announcement, no speeches, no cameras. But the following Monday, a letter showed up in my mailbox. Heavy paper, handwritten envelope. In the corner, it read, "Evelyn Carter, Director, American Valor Museum." Inside was a single page. "Mr. Hayes, we failed to recognize not only your service, but your presence. Our staff acted without understanding and without respect. That failure belongs to us, and it is ours to correct. You are welcome here any time. No ticket required. We would like to host a small gathering in your honor, not for ceremony, but simply to say we remember. With respect. Evelyn Carter." I sat with that letter for a long time. Then I folded it neatly and placed it in the top drawer of my desk. I did not smile. I did not sigh. I just nodded, like someone who had waited a long while for things to be set right. That Friday, the general came back. No dress uniform this time. Just a pressed jacket and the same quiet gravity about him. He joined me at the diner for coffee. We talked easy, like men who had known each other longer than they actually had. "I looked up the name," he said. "Corporal Jack Turner. My father wrote about him in one of his journals. Said he owed his life to a mechanic who never waited for permission." I stirred my coffee. Jack Turner was a brave man. That tunnel would have come down if he had not held that beam while I worked. I shrugged. I was just the guy with the wrench. That guy, the general said, kept half a squad alive with a broken jack and a bent axle. My father never forgot it. I did not answer. There was nothing left to add. And later that evening, that bench at the museum was no longer just a place to sit. It was a marker. It meant someone had been there, and someone remembered. Someone had placed a small wooden plaque beneath the bench. Simple. Hand-carved. It read, "Reserved. Walter Hayes, 82nd Airborne Division." Still standing. People noticed. Visitors slowed their steps when they passed. Some stopped altogether. A few older veterans came by and tipped a salute toward the bench, even on days when I was not there. They understood what it meant. One afternoon, the young security guard came back, the same one who had grabbed my arm. He did not draw attention to himself. He walked up quietly, his cap held in both hands. "I was wrong, sir," he said. "I read about you. I did not see it then." I nodded, not harsh, not soft either, just honest. "I did not expect you to. Just try to notice the next one." He swallowed, nodded once, and walked away. Justice did not come crashing down. It did not shout. It settled in gently, right where it belonged. What was meant to be a small idea stayed that way in name only. Just a quiet gathering, the museum director had said. No announcements, no microphones, just a few people who cared enough to show up. But in a small town, word moves differently, especially when it is something worth hearing. By Sunday morning, folding chairs covered the front lawn of the American Valor Museum. There were no banners, just a single flag raised high, moving slow in the cool autumn breeze. I did not want the front seat, but the general would not hear of it. "You earned that chair before half of us were born," he told me. "You are not sitting in the back today." I wore the same brown jacket I always did. This time, the patch on my shoulder had been cleaned and stitched again, straight and proper. Faces I had not seen in years appeared. The woman from the diner brought a warm apple pie wrapped in twine inside a tin. A student from the high school paper took photographs carefully, not chasing attention, just trying to capture something real. There was no music, no long speeches, just the sound of footsteps and wind as the general stepped forward. He did not read from notes. "Some men leave marks you do not notice until much later," he said. "They do not ask to be seen. They do not wait for applause. They just keep showing up." He turned toward me, his voice steady. "When others ran, you stayed. When others hesitated, you moved. When this town forgot, you came back anyway." Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small dark blue box, worn around the edges. Inside was a Valor Recognition medallion, engraved with a single line, "For quiet valor that still speaks." I did not say a word. I stood slowly, knees unsteady, and took the medal with both hands. One person stood, then another, and soon everyone was on their feet. No one clapped, no one shouted. They simply stood, because some moments do not need noise, they just need to be witnessed. The following week, the bench at the museum rarely sat empty. Some days I was there with a cup of coffee. Other days, a student sat nearby, scribbling notes for a school assignment. Once, someone left flowers. Small white lilies in a mason jar. No card, no name. At the diner, they stopped charging me. They did not make a show of it. Linda just poured the coffee, set down my plate, and gave a small nod. "You were always good to us," she said one morning. "We just forgot to say it." I nodded back. "That is all right," I told her. "You're saying it now." Later that month, the local high school invited me to speak at their Veterans Day assembly. I said no at first. I told them I was not much for talking in front of people. A few days later, the principal sent me a handwritten note. It was signed by 20 students. "We do not want a hero," it read. "We want to hear from someone real." Those words stayed with me. So that Friday morning, I found myself standing behind a podium in the school gym, facing close to 280 students and staff. There was no slideshow flashing behind me, no microphone squeal, just me, a room full of faces, and a folded piece of paper in my pocket that I never once unfolded. "I have been called a lot of things over the years," I said. "Mechanic, sergeant, husband, nuisance." I let that last word hang there for a moment. "But labels are not what matter," I went on. "What matters is whether you show up." I just kept showing up, even when nobody noticed. The room went quiet. "I'm not looking for applause," I said. "I never was. I just wanted to know that what I gave meant something." I looked out over the rows of students. Some leaned forward in their seats. Others blinked fast, surprised by the tight feeling in their chest. If someone in your life shows up for you every day, quietly, without asking for thanks, notice them, I told them. That is service too. When I finished, nobody jumped to their feet. Nobody rushed to clap. They just sat there and let it settle. That was exactly what I wanted. Not celebration. Just to be seen for who I really was. Winter was close when the porch light outside my apartment finally stopped burning out. I changed the bulb myself, standing on the second rung of an old wooden stool, grumbling about cold fingers and bad wiring. That light stayed on after that, every night. Not because I was waiting on anyone, but because people had started stopping by. Linda from the diner brought a pie once a week. The museum director came by with a history student who wanted to know what jungle humidity felt like. Even the young security guard returned one evening. He brought his father with him, a retired Air Force medic. The man shook my hand like it meant something sacred. They did not stay long. They did not need to. On the shelf in my living room sat the medallion the general had given me. Beside it rested the old photograph of 3 young soldiers grinning like the world had not hardened them yet. I had stuck a small note on the back. Still here. Still grateful. That night, as snow started to dust the sidewalks, I sat out on my porch. My flannel collar was turned up, a warm mug in my hands. The porch light glowed above me, steady and bright, like a quiet flag. Across the street, a boy skidded to a stop on his bicycle and waved. "Hi, Mr. Walter," he called. "My teacher read your story to us." I waved back. "She said you were not loud like other veterans," he added, "but that you still mattered." I smiled. "She sounds like a smart woman." He nodded and pedaled off, tires squealing as he disappeared around the corner. I leaned back in my chair. The wood creaked, but it held. It always had, and for the first time in a long while, I did not feel like a problem to be moved along or a nuisance to clear out. I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. Home.